First time I reported it was hushed, and they told me that it's best if you resign. They don't give a shit because they lied and they covered up. Yelling at me in front of my peers, that was so humiliating. I didn't get out of bed for 2 weeks. You're treated like a criminal.
So today we've got Erin McMaster joining us, and it's an honour to have you here, Erin. Thank you so much. And what we'll do to start with is just have you tell us a little bit about yourself, if you'd like.
Hi, my name's Erin. I've been in the construction industry probably about 5 years now. Started in my early 40s, which is probably a late start for most people, but relocated to Melbourne for a family thing and decided to go into that after having a few years off work. And yeah, it wasn't exactly the warmest reception I got on my first day. I've had a couple of experiences in the industry. The first one was probably the worst, where I turned up for a job, and because the boss wanted a guy, not a girl, he ran me around for 2 hours and wouldn't meet me. He gave me different locations, so I just kept moving around and going in circles. And then I finally cracked it 2 hours later, and I said, if you're not going to tell me where I'm going, I'm going to leave. So he said, all right, we'll come down here. So I met him at the compound. He was really rude. He gave me some paperwork to do. He said, fill that in, I'll be back. And then when he came back, he said, all right, this is what you're going to do. You're going to have a broom and a shovel, and you're sweeping all day. And he put me on the shovel. He basically put me on show in front of all the other trade services on the ground, sweeping concrete and chipping off concrete. So I wasn't going to let him beat me, so I just went, okay. So I did it all day, and I actually had one of the machine operators come up and help me, and I had a comment about that. But I finished my day. 3:30 came. I rang. He didn't answer. I said, I've finished. I put everything back at the yard, and I left. And as I drove out, I burst into tears. That was so humiliating, and I was just like, wow, I don't want to ever go back and work in construction again, never. And I rang my sister, who was the one who encouraged me to get into construction. And I said, no way. And I was crying, and I said, oh, I don't want to do this. She said, what the hell? She was really pissed off, and she said, that's not right. She said, we're supposed to, I'm encouraging you to do this, and this is what happens. So that's where it started. But I spoke to my boss, because I was labour hire, and because that was one of their companies they labour hired through, nothing was going to get done. They said, oh, we'll speak to them, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, sometimes it's not always the way it happens, and it's not always addressed because they don't like to ruffle the feathers.
So this was your first day?
First day, yeah.
First day, so you're being moved from, like, you're not actually being really told what to do, but
No.
you just kind of like go there, go there, go there, and then eventually after 2 hours, like you kind of go, hey, come on, I need to actually know what's going on here.
Yeah, he made me just go in circles for 2 hours. Wouldn't tell me exactly the depot address. I was just going around streets and streets. He's just making me go in circles.
So you were engaged through a labour hire company as a labourer?
Yes.
Okay, and so the labour hire company, did they give you any overview of, like what it was that you'd be doing or anything like that as part of the services?
Just labouring, just helping out wherever I was asked, and working with other operators. But it was nothing. I didn't work with anyone for the day. I was there by myself, and yeah, because because I was a girl, he didn't want me to work, so he just gave me a shitty task to do. So he could say, oh, well, he gave me a job to do.
Just to clarify, so you're going new to the industry through a labour hire company to a construction site, like there was no one there to actually do inductions with you, tell you about reporting, tell you about processes, tell you about any of that kind of...
No, basically he was just like, fill these in. That was all swims and safe work, all the safety stuff. Basically do it yourself, tick this, read this, tick this, not explain anything, and I'll be back. And then when he came back, he just said, grab a broom and shovel, and we're going here, and I'll show you where to go. But I was just left high and dry. couldn't ask questions. He obviously had the shits because I was a girl and he had to actually deal with me. But yeah, that was one of the worst days, I think, if not the worst of construction so far.
Oh my gosh. And like, no, here you are, like you've lasted 5 years in the industry, which is a real credit to you. Like that was your introduction on
Yeah,
day one. So
yeah.
you left the day, you're bawling your eyes out, you're speaking to your sister. Um, and so from that, like, what was the next things that happened after that?
Well, I said I said I'll never go back to that site again. And I said I will try again, but I'll go to another site. And the next site was better, more people, and I suppose more people to help you and assist you being new. But it just varies what company you work for, what area you work for, what you're supposed to be doing, and the it all basically comes back down to management. And
Mm,
if your managers aren't trained right and don't have the right attitude, they don't give a shit. They're just you're
mm,
ticking the box. They're filling in and ticking the box, and that's another thing I've found being female and Indigenous in the industry. I tick boxes. Doesn't mean they want me to do the job. I tick boxes, and that was another incident I had. I came off the ground from a machine operator doing a Cert 3 in civil, and I had one of the companies, one of the tier one companies, chase me for months and months. Say, come over here, we want you to join the safety team. So that was coming off something I liked and I was enjoying. I actually won an award that place where I was. But yeah, they asked me, so they chased me. And I said, okay, I finally did it. They offered me a pretty good deal. And then when I started with them, it was nothing like they'd promised. It was basically I was ticking the boxes. I was female, I was Indigenous. It was a part of their project requirement. And when I tried to learn and forward my career, like I was going back to training as an assessor because we could deliver different training courses and talks, but that was stopped. And once things like that started getting stopped to me, and I put my hand, I'll go, oh, I can help with that. They were talking about something on the ground. And I said, look, I've done that on the ground. I could offer my inside from there. They said, no, you just sit over there and just do paperwork, and we don't need your input. So that was another version in another company that I was just ticking a box. And I don't want to tick a box. I want to actually, contribute and be part of the team. But if they're going to keep doing that as ticking the box, well, that's what happens. And it was pretty bad. I ended up leaving there in the end because I was just ticking their box. I wasn't going to I never actually started my training in safety or anything. And I was there 3 months. So they were pushing everything back because they didn't want me to progress. They wanted other people that they knew to come through before me and me just stay as an admin.
So how did that impact you? With
Uh,
you've had these couple of experiences that you've shared. So day one was pretty horrendous, like and humiliating. And then you go work for a tier one and the perception is that tier ones have a little bit more systems and processes and things in place, but then you've put your hand up for a certain role and the reality of what you've put your hand up for to what you're actually doing is completely different, and
yeah,
there's no support. It seems there was no support there to help you actually progress to be able to do the role that you'd expressed an interest in.
I actually went to my initial hiring boss and that, which was the head of the department, and of my concerns, and another trainer and a trainer that was very high up in safety. I spoke to him, and they actually documented what happened to me. And in the end, they turned around and they said they had, when I finally spoke out about bullying and that from my boss, they said, "Oh, sorry, we haven't got a job for you anymore," and that was it. They sent me home and they told me that. And then they said, it's best if you resign. I said, I'm not resigning. I said, I want to work. And I said, and in the few weeks before this happened, I was helping one of the stores guy in another department because they gave me no work to do. So I went and helped another department, and they said, oh, would love to have you across. And that was supposed to be in talks, and I was supposed to be transferring to that team. But because I spoke out and I raised, because I'd been speaking to someone in diversity and that, and telling them what was going on and trying to work through with them, they said, you're going to have to report it. First time I reported it, I was gone. So the job that in the stores were gone, everything, any other opportunity, they wanted me out. And that was 18 months ago, and nearly 2 years ago now. And so I took some time off work, and yeah, I didn't return back to work, and I was under stress leave, and that took nearly 2 years to come through. And the claim was initially denied, but I fought it, and on appeal, with my evidence that I provided, it was overturned.
So walk me through, and I don't want to obviously re-traumatize or anything, but walk me through what actually happened with that you came in, you thought you were going to be doing a particular role, you weren't doing that role. There was obviously a few other things that happened as well that, would love to hear a little bit more about as well if you're comfortable sharing. But then as a result of accumulation of things, it wasn't just one thing, accumulation of things, you've raised it as a concern from a bullying perspective, and then you were pushed out.
It started because I was in an all male team, and I learned from a couple of the other girls that had been in that team that they had been sent out or relocated. They'd asked to be taken out of that team because of the male egos that were bouncing around that team. And I thought, being coming from the ground, I'd have a bit more rapport with them. No, and it wasn't true. Putting me on show, yelling at me in front of my peers, abusing me on the phone, yeah, anything that could be picked, it was. And then as I was, okay, well, I'm not sure about this. Or if I asked a question, it was like, I told you this or I told you that, and I was not. The training was never provided, never adequate. I had a sort of a mentor or an Aboriginal person supporting me, and the worst thing was she was supposedly supporting me, but she had worked with my boss in a previous project, so they were mates. So everything I was talking and discussing with her, she was going back and telling him. And I didn't find out that till after I actually left. But yeah, that didn't help. So I'm trying to confide in her and find a solution, and thinking I was just getting thrown under the bus was the reality of it. And this was like the goings on and what happened during the 3 months. Like the other managers were aware of it, was actually pretty well known in the company. But as soon as I spoke out about it, it was hushed and I was sent away.
How did that impact you?
I got really depressed. I wouldn't get out of bed. I didn't get out of bed for 2 weeks. And I was just like, why me? You're supposed to, I'm practicing their procedures, their policies, doing everything according to them and their rules and regulations, and yet I'm getting punished for it. And my daughter was finishing year 12 at the time, and she started missing school because I wasn't getting out of bed, and she was worried about me. So it was either me get out of bed or she was going to fail year 12 because she wouldn't go because I was in bed. So I had to eventually get up and try and be a bit more a part of just general life, so she could pass year 12. But after that incident, I probably didn't find work. It's been 18 months and it's been very, very hard to find work because I think it was because I have an open, like pending WorkCover or something. But yeah, I applied for so many jobs and I could not get work anywhere. And for the first 6 months, I was on WorkCover and I couldn't get settling. So I got so far behind in my rent, that's my rental, my car payment, yeah, and being that far behind in bills and you've got no one to help you, you can't get a loan, nothing. It's not real good for the mental health. That suffered so much. I've lost probably 10 kilos or more in that year, and my health has suffered. So it's not good.
I'm so sorry. And it's it's I'm just like a little bit astounded, to be honest, because your first day was like one of the toughest days of your life, and then you found an opportunity that was something you were really interested in, and then that was kind of not the reality. And then when you're doing something, So that role that you were actually doing, what was that role where you were in that all male team?
They sold it to me as a safety coordinator. But when I started the role, it was the safety admin. So it was the starting at the,
Yeah.
and I said, well, this I was told it was a coordinated position, and they said, oh no no, like, and I had the paperwork to show everything, and they said, oh no, you're doing admin.
The hypocrisy of that is that here you are going and working in a safety team, and your safety, your psychological safety is harmed.
Yeah, it's really good from a worker point of view, and I can understand why people have had problems in the industry and that because they've spoke out. It's basically if you shut your mouth, go to work, nod, be a yes man, you're right. And I don't, I learned long ago that someone has to speak up, and it hasn't really worked so good in my benefit. But you know what? Maybe it's saved someone else in the pipeline or somewhere along the line that'll save them from going through what I've been through and suffering as much as I have. I'm still in the construction industry. Like I just adapted and did whatever I could to a little bit of spotting work. I've got my truck license, Moxies, and so I've picked up work again. But it was really, really hard to actually get a start back in. But I've been doing a little bit of work, drive in, drive out lately, and it was down with Downer, rural Victoria job. And I must say that was a great team to work for. It was really good to go back to work and be in the machines again, but working with the crew like that.
So tell us about the difference between working in, for a different tier one company and you're, safety coordinator, admin in a safety team, and then you go and work, you do the Dido role and you're working for Downers and you've got a great team. What was the difference between those different teams? Like what was great about, doing working for Downer?
The being feel like you're a part of the team with Downer, whereas the safety team I was like just isolated. I was never included. Where Downer is, it's all inclusive. Like you get to pre-start, everyone you're welcome. You feel welcome there. Even the subbies, it's just I don't know. It's a really really nice place to work. You actually want to go to work because you're included and you're a part of the team. And as far as your contribution is valid and valued, and they're really happy to teach me, like and let me upskill. Whereas I never got that in the safety team. They wanted to hold me back. That was a good reason to keep me in the industry. And I'm going to try and look for some sort of similar role now.
Yeah. And so I just want to go back to the situation like when you reported with this previous company about the issues of bullying because you were being yelled at, you were being excluded, you like all the classic signs of bullying. I mean, it's well listed.
I've
Yes.
been making notes the whole time, like along the way, of different incidents that had happened. There was an incident where you had to go to pre-start, and I said, "Oh, I'll come to the pre-start." So I turned up at the pre-start meeting, and my team's over there, and I'm left there and not included in the morning pre-start. I'm like, wow, that's great. That makes it really hard to go to work every day. You know, like I drove over an hour to go to work every day to that job. So I spent a lot of time on the road. I was not getting home too late with my daughter. Like I struggled with the travel and everything else. And yeah, and that's what they end up making the excuse. They said, oh, it's too far I want more money and too far for me to travel. That's what they told WorkCover.
Was the reason. So let's just go one step back. So then you ended up reporting it. What I want to do is like really understand how it was managed. So walk us through like what actually happened in that regards.
I reported it. They came down and saw me that day, and I knew, I knew straight away. It was like they're going to come and address me, and they pulled me aside and went sat with me and spoke with me, and they said, "Look, we know, yeah, I understand you're having a hard time. Everything. We're going to look into this." And they were all aware of this because they were trying to put me in another role in another department. So they were all aware of this, but it wasn't until I actually made it official that they did something about it. But a couple of the safety bosses, they knew, and they went into bat for me, but their hands were pretty much tied once HR got involved. And HR came in and sort of sugarcoated it, made me feel good. They said, look, we know you've been a bit upset today, and you've had a few days being upset, and you've come in. Now we'll just go home and don't worry about things, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Don't worry about today. Just go home and we'll work things out, and we'll give you a call and we'll tell you what we've got for you. And
so you weren't okay. So at that point, like, you weren't on WorkCover. You were still at work. You'd reported the incident to HR. HR came and spoke to you and basically said, go home. So there was no indication that they were going to do an investigation.
no,
There was none of that. There was no offer of a support person for them
no,
for you to have when they came and spoke to you.
no. They said, oh, look, we'll just, no, they just sort of shut me down. And then the two people that I dealt with, my Aboriginal support person actually rang me and as my friend, I knew they were teaming up because I heard them. One rang me and on the other one's phone and told me that I should resign. It would be better if I resigned. So she didn't want it on her phone. She used the other one's phone and told me that.
And that was on that day?
That was on that day that I got home.
So you reported it. HR said, go home, don't worry about it. Like, we'll be in touch, essentially. Yep. So was that was that an interpretation that just take some time out while we sort it
out? Because they knew they were supposed to transition me to the other role and that, and I'd been asking for weeks when that was going to happen, and they were sort of pushing back and giving excuses for that. And I just thought that it would transition and that would be it. But no, they just basically said, no, we've got to get rid of her because she's trouble, because she's spoken out, and we don't want her around. So, yeah, I was just basically thrown to the wolves right then. And I said, what about the other roles? No, we've got no other position. And then the worst thing was I had a couple of contacts, women in construction and that. And not long after that, I had one of the girls ring up and she said, we've got the perfect role for you. It's a trainee supervisor role. It's on a tier 1 project. They need 3 women for this project, and being Indigenous and that. And they said, and you'd be, with your experience on the ground, you'd be perfect at this role. And I said, it's not with blah, blah. And they said, yeah, why? I said, I've just finished with them, and I said, they've told me they've got no work, no job for me on any other field, no other position on the project for me. And yet you offer me that position, which I could fill and do well, and they're telling me there's no jobs. So that was another thing. They didn't want me to come back, and that was final. And then months and months after, when they tried to talk and get me back into the team because they knew they had fucked up, they said, well, come in for a meeting, this is what we've done, you've got to come back to the safety team, or this and that, and this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it, and you're going to start Monday, and that's the end of it. That's the end of it. I'm like, no, I'm not. So I had a support.
So you were on WorkCover up until this point for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And so what was happening in this point? Was anyone checking in with you? Was anyone contacting you? Anyone giving you updates?
No, everyone was told not to talk to me. But my safety person or person that was supposed to be checking in on me, they just said send the paperwork to me. That's it. There was no check-in phone calls. I got no support from that workplace whatsoever.
Was there any any indication that you could contact EAP?
They mentioned that. They said you can go and have some counsel, speak to someone and that, but they were so very unhelpful, and it's like, wow, as if this is what it's like on WorkCover, and this is why you never want to go on it again, because you're treated like a criminal. You definitely are treated like you've done something wrong.
So then they call you back a couple months later and go, you have to come back to the safety team. This is what you're doing. So what does that, tell us about that conversation and what that looked like?
Well, the whole safety team had told me not to talk to me or contact me. So straight away they're trying to put me back in a team that was told not to, that I was out and not to speak to me. So imagine feeling that no one's going to want me in their team. And one of the managers rang me and he said, you can come across to my team. They were going to push everything back, my training again, and they were going to keep me down in that admin position, not let me progress. I'm sitting here and I'm being like told what I'm doing, and that's it. There's no discussion, or there's nothing. And they just told me basically that's what I'm doing, and I need to sign the paper and I need to turn up Monday. If I don't turn up Monday, that means I'm not turning up for my role. So that means I've fucked up again. So that
So
was
they've given you an ultimatum,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, they did.
They left you high and dry. There was no support, and then they turn around and go, all right, here's an ultimatum, come back or else.
Yep. Yep.
So at this point with your WorkCover, just to be clear, at this point with your WorkCover, was this at a point with WorkCover where they were trying to then do a return to work integration through WorkCover?
I think maybe that had something to do with it, but they told WorkCover that there's no bullying, there's no harassment. They said I just didn't want the job, I wanted more money, and just rubbish. And I'm like, it's never about that. It was about doing my job. It was about being inclusive and I didn't start my training, and I was bullied and harassed, and I just was told basically suck it up. And they went, oh no, and that's why the claim was denied, because they lied and they covered up. And because I told her, I said this is who it is, and this is blah blah blah, but they covered it up enough to make it look like I just didn't want to work, until I actually appealed it and then presented more evidence.
So you were on WorkCover, and now you're at this point where they're coming back to you to say there's a job, this is the job, whether you like it or not. If you don't turn up, then, there's a term abandonment of employment, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, something like that. So it was like they had me like stuck in a corner again. But I wasn't going to go back on their terms or that, because I didn't feel comfortable. Like I was still feeling just nauseous being around them. The deception and the bullshit they'd already put me through. And now they want to be all nice and oh, come back. Like, no. So
So what happened then?
I didn't go back. I said no. I said I'm not going to go back. I said I'm not comfortable with that. I said this whole safety team has been told not to talk to me. And I said, now you want me to go back and work in that team? I said, how is that going to feel? I said, I already feel bad enough for what you put me through. And I said, made it to be my fault. How can I go work in a team that has basically been told I'm the bad one? And yeah, I said, would you like to go back and work in that sort of environment? Because I wouldn't.
And how was that received?
They said, well, we've offered you a position and job and you need to take it. They really didn't care. They just said, no, this is what you've got to do, and it's going to be on you if you don't accept it. So, but I didn't accept it. I was like, no, I'm not going back that, because I was actually feeling ill just even thinking about it.
So it was physically having an impact on you.
Yeah.
And so it was in this time, like you were off and you obviously were dealing with, the depression and not being able to get out of work and get out of bed, sorry. And,
Yep.
You lost weight and everything, and your daughter finishing grade 12.
Yeah.
And then being told that you've been put back into a position that caused those issues in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. So, and that was probably one of the worst years I've had, because that was May and this is coming up to Christmas, and it was only denied like 6 months in. So I basically, come to Christmas and I had no job, no income, no work cover. And my daughter was going to do a deb, and I couldn't even buy her a deb dress. Like I couldn't even afford to pay rent and get food. It was, yeah, pretty bad. And Centrelink couldn't help me because I was on work cover, and even though I wasn't receiving payments, so that sucks too.
So how does that work if you're on WorkCover but you're not actually getting any WorkCover payments?
You can't get Centrelink. They told me wasn't eligible to get Centrelink because I was on work cover, even though I wasn't actually getting payments.
How are people meant to live?
I don't know. I borrowed money of my family, of my friends, and I'm still paying it back now.
Yeah, I mean, this has had a huge impact on you. And I mean, I know you and I have obviously been conversing for some time about this as well. But what is it that you'd like others to know about these sort of situations? Like, especially if they're dealing with the bullying and the harassment and,
You know
the
what? Speak up, because it's never going to stop unless we talk, unless someone speaks up. And it's, if it's going to have to be you, because not everyone can do what we do. Not everyone can speak up and go through what we do, but there's so much support there. Meeting you was like, how cool was that? And it's, it's another journey that we've begun and another chapter. And, we're meeting and networking other people. And I've been talking to other people after that all experience, and like sharing it as well, because I don't want anyone else to go through that and be in the situation I do. But um, without talking about it, and without other people feeling okay to talk about it, because they might be in the middle of a situation now and they're like, oh, I can't do that, to do that because I'll lose my job and that. But you know what, speak up and know that you've got support out there. Well, it came that they were in the wrong, and I got paid a couple months pay, but which is nothing to being out of work, not 18 months. But the whole fact is they shouldn't do that to someone else, I hope.
like it's a credit to you, Erin, because it is absolutely a sign of your integrity as well. And I really want to acknowledge that in this moment because it's not easy being the person that speaks up because you are treated like the criminal. You're not given the support, you're basically pushed out, you're shut up, you're excluded. Like it's another form of the bullying that happens, excluded, and you're not told what's happened and what's happened to you with being pushed out, and there wasn't even phone calls to check in on you or anything like that from anyone. So there was no care factor from, a company perspective about your well-being as a person, which is really quite appalling, to be honest. But this actually speaks to your integrity, because even when you were then offered a job and it would have been easy to then go, I need the money, I'll go back and I'll just suck it up and deal with it, your integrity actually stood higher and said, you know what, I am not going to, and your self-respect as well stood higher and went, you know what, I am not going to put myself through that again.
No, it wasn't. Even my daughter said, she goes, you can't go back, mum. You know what they did to you, what they did to you, they're going to do it again. And
Mm.
yeah, I couldn't go back to that team. It was like, no, I've just got to find something else. And they made it hard, because I know a lot of jobs that I went for I didn't get, because um, people know people in the industry, and that's how it is. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm.
So which is sad, because like I've got a good work ethic, and no one can knock me back from my work, especially operating in that. Like the boys down said, they said, "Do awesome operator. If we could put you on, we would." But we've got other crews coming across and that. So that was good to have a role like that and give me some self worth back on the ground. That was really good and really helped me a lot. It's given me a lot of confidence back to go and work somewhere like that.
And one thing I really want to touch on as well, because you mentioned it earlier, was about this ticking the box. And there's a lot of stuff happening, like, the projects that have government funding have all these targets that they need to meet, like how many women in different roles, how much money they need to spend with Aboriginal businesses, with,
Yeah.
social enterprises, all of that kind of stuff. And given your circumstances and your experience of what's happened to you, what do you think about these targets and quotas that are being set for these government funded projects?
Like, it's good they have that inclusion there, because it's, giving back to the Aboriginal people and everything. But at the same time, I think the person for the job should be the right person. And whether they should be, maybe have a little bit more variance with the percentage they've got to have female or Indigenous in certain roles. Like, they're not going to always fit there, but at the same time, they should be trying to introduce the women and train them and educate them in the new roles. So we have much more opportunity across the board, and we do spread ourselves out through the industry in different levels of management and in different fields.
Yeah, I agree. And it needs to be that it's not just, let's hire women to be traffic controllers or
Don't
laborers or things
stereotype,
like
yeah,
that.
don't stereotype them. But and
Yeah.
look, I would love to be a part of anything that they're trying to start up on a new project and that, and check in on the girls, especially on such a male dominated industry. There's sometimes not a lot of support for women in construction. Safety, there was a little bit more, but I know being on the ground, there was a couple of issues there, and it was swept under the carpet. And it was one of the boys' mates that they had he was just being really rude, disrespectful, but they just let it go because it was one of their mates. That does happen and on the ground, like to us females down there. You know what? There's got to be a better mentor or support group from a female perspective on the ground that they can come to, feel comfortable, and discuss anything without them being isolated or selected out and try to be pushed out, because that does go on too.
And what else do you think needs to change to help stop these sort of, experiences happening like what's happened to you? What
Um,
would you like to see change?
you know what? They've got to be the people doing the things like they did to me. They've got to be called out, and they've got to be. They need to address their issues. They need to re-educate or retrain them, because if they don't change their ways, they're going to just do it to the next person in that team, even if it's not actually directly charged to them. They should be held accountable for their actions in some way.
So there's two lots of, for me, it's like there's two lots of accountability. There's accountability at a management level to
Yeah.
actually do an investigation, check what's going on, see where the gaps are of what's happening, like what's causing these behaviors. And then there needs to be accountability for the people who are actually doing it as well.
Yes, that's right.
So if we split that accountability at a management level, what would you like to see happen there?
Well, instead of the person that's being bullied or something, instead of just isolating them or putting them in a situation they're going to feel even more uncomfortable in, giving them a bit of time out with support, not just saying go home and then you don't have a job. And at the same time, there needs to be other parties involved. I suppose to be the negotiator to make sure everyone's happy, and even the person bullying, they might not be aware of their actions as such because that's how they've been raised or how they've always done the job. But to work with everyone across the board on being aware of their actions and the effects, and helping everyone get through it.
Yeah, yeah. And then for the individual, so like obviously a bit more training for them. What else would you like to see as well?
To feel confident enough to speak up and say if they're not comfortable with it, or if they don't agree with it, or they don't like what they're being offered, there to be a neutral someone they can go to and say, look, and discuss it without being pushed into a corner or pushed a certain way, because that's just how it is. Yeah, someone that, to feel that you're being treated fairly, and that you do have options.
Well, it comes back to having a psychologically safe environment in the first place,
Yeah,
doesn't it? Like
that's right.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a safe environment, and whether that's physical safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, then it is actually a lot easier. But if any of those are impaired or not working well, then it's going to make it a lot harder to have a very well functioning project or team.
Yes, that's right.
Mm. In closing, if there's one thing you could say about like your experience that you could share that would be helpful information for someone listening to this, what would that be?
Don't give up a career or a job that you want to do or you're very passionate about because of behavior of others on site or something. Stick with your guns and ask for help and speak to someone, because someone shouldn't be able to take away your dream career or your dream job because you don't tick their box. So
Mm.
just speak up and don't give it up. Don't just walk away without trying to get some help and fight for that job that you want and you love.
And also know that there are people out there who will help you as well.
100%, 100%. And look, I found you, and that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But there are people, I mean, there's lots of good people out there wanting to help make a difference who are there to support as well. So they may not be in your immediate work environment, but they are there. So that's a good thing to know as well. So
Yeah, that's right. And look, I'd be happy to talk to anyone that's going through the same situation, or any job I in the future, be a part of the women, which I actually, for two tier 1 companies, I actually spoke and in Melbourne, like at seminars on women in construction and my experiences and my difficulties and challenges in the industry. Yeah, I've spoken up, and I'd still like to be a part of that. So maybe one day in my next role, there'll be a job that I can work on the ground, operate machinery, and still be a part of that network or that change.
And the thing is that, you know, stories are very powerful, and our experiences, as shitty as they are when we go through them, like they really are, like, you know, life can dish up some really shitty experiences to us, but they actually can help us make a difference for others as
Oh,
well. So
100%. And hopefully my sister, she's in FIFO, and yeah, and mine's now in the bigger machinery. And then hopefully one day I'll get to go and work with her. I'm still trying to get over there, but yeah, I'm trying to
yeah,
get bigger stuff. But look, I'm happy doing whatever at the moment. I'm happy to be operating again. So I'm just waiting to start my next role. So
awesome. No, well, that's great. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your story and what you've been through. And I'm sorry for what you've been through and your experiences that you've had in the industry. Like, this is the reason why we share these stories, is to help shine a light so we can help make the industry do better. So,
yeah, no worries. Well, thanks for including me and asking me to come in and speak. And look, I'm glad it was me and not someone else, because I'm still here. And if we can save someone else going through this, we've done a good day's work.
exactly, exactly. I agree. Well, thank you, Erin. Appreciate your time.
No worries. Thanks, Angela. Have a great day.